Hey guys, SoCal Val here. You are listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Welcome everybody back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. I am your host, Adam Cousins. Andy is still in Spain, although he did join my illustrious colleague Dave Robinson for the SummerSlam review, but he's currently swinging some golf clubs in Spain. But like I said, never fear, this is Impact Wrestling review, and I am joined by the other half of our trios, Mr. Dave Robinson. Morning, sir.
Morning, mate. I hope he hasn't put it on expenses.
Well, if he does, it'll be his expenses, not ours. He can swing as many golf clubs as he wants. Puts it on the expense on the account. But anyway, Impact Wrestling time again, Dave, and another good episode last week.
Yeah, really good, really good.
So let's crack straight on. So basically, the Impact Wrestling starts last week with Trinity coming out. Basically, how Chicago was important to her in Chicago. She knows how important it was because she debuted there, and she promised she would come back and knock out champion. She did. Deonna Pizarro come out, basically just hyping up the match between them two that is coming up. They've been interrupted at that point by the COVID, and they basically played them off each other, gave them a tarot card reading through the cards. Pizarro, who wasn't dressed to compete, basically they had this little brawl start. Santino come out. Pizarro wanted the tag match, even though she had no sort of wrestling gear on. And that match actually happened. There was a bit of indecision between Trinity and Pizarro during that match, which ended up costing them the match. My only concern with that, I mean, I thought it was a really solid opener. Loved how they started it, Trinity and Deonna. Really good start. But the number one contender taking the fall, I'm not sure about.
Yeah. As you say, it's a difficult one when you do anything like that. And generally, the champion and challenger go over, but obviously the Coven are an established team. So this was to, I suppose, create a little bit more dissension between the champion and challenger, and make the stakes a little bit more interesting for when they come to face each other coming up. I think, is it Emergency or is it before
Emergence?
Yeah. So that should be an absolutely great match. So just interesting there what happens in the coming weeks until we get there.
Yeah, I mean, Killing King hit the Excalibuster on Pizarro to pick up the win. So yeah, I was just a little bit, obviously number one contenders being pinned.
I suppose I'm skewed a little bit because I'm a Kylan King fan. So to see her pick up a win over Deonna Pizarro, so yeah, that's a big thing for Kylan as well. So yeah, a little bit conflicted, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. After that, they went backstage. The Rascals were talking about their upcoming match with Bayley and John Grisham, which was quite interesting because Grisham had the interview a couple of weeks ago, so we didn't really know where he stands. But this week he's teaming with Speedball. D'Amore come up, fined them 2 weeks wages for interfering in the match last week. Said that he would indefinitely suspend him if they do anything else. That cut back then to Alicia and Eddie Edwards. Alicia basically said that she'd ran Tracy Brooks out of Impact again. That brought in Jodie Fret, who walked up and said she did nothing of the sort, and that Edwards and Fret would be having a match in the near future. Is that a sort of Jodie Fret, Alicia Edwards, is that something that you'd be looking forward to seeing?
Well, they've set that match up for next week, and it's interesting to see how Kazarian still plays into this, because I don't think he's finished with Eddie Edwards. I think there's another match on the horizon for those two. So yeah, I think perhaps if Tracy Brooks isn't capable of wrestling these days or in a proper match, then I suppose you got Jodie Threat to tag in for Tracy Brooks. So you could have that 2v2 match still down the line. So yeah, it makes sense to me. I think they're facing off next week on Impact, aren't they?
Yes. Or in this case tomorrow. Called this week on a Wednesday. So yes, they are wrestling this week, I believe. Now, another thing, and this is another thing that confused me about Impact. Alan Angels left Design.
Yeah.
We assumed at this point he had left and he was a face. it doesn't seem to be the case.
No, he's kind of an arrogant kind of rock star gimmick. So yeah, he's not a particular fan favorite. And he was up against a man who definitely is in Heath.
Yes.
Really enjoyed this match. I thought they had real good chemistry together, and it was a great match.
Yeah, it was. It just threw me because, as again, when Alan Angels left design, you would automatically assume you leave a heel faction, you become a face, but he's just going in a different direction as a heel, which is interesting. I don't think it's really been done much before, Dave, that I can remember.
Not really, no. When, as you say, when you leave the heel faction, it tends to be, you've had a change of, a bit of a change in your personality or the way that you want to do things, or a change of heart. But he's kind of doubled down on the heel tactics, and certainly not too interested if the crowd cheer for him. Whereas Heath, obviously man of the people, kind of coming out through the crowd. He was in the crowd at the end as well. So yeah, very different dynamic. But I do like Heath's gimmick of or character of getting involved when he feels necessary, when there's misdemeanors, or when there's things that need addressing, that Heath will take it upon himself to be a bit of a vigilante. So I quite like that.
Yeah, I do. Do you know what it looks like? It looks like Heath's enjoying himself as well, which is
absolutely.
Nice to see. After all those years in the WWE, it's really good to see him kind of come into his own a lot more, keeping the same sort of character, but seems to be having a lot more fun at Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, he's also been known as a tag wrestler a lot in the last few years with Rhino. So now to be in his own, the Red-Headed Rebel, he's calling himself, and he's got his own entrance. He's his own man. He's not necessarily affiliated with anybody else, and he's a great wrestler. And that has never been in doubt. But he's always been part of, since he was the one-man band. And he obviously came into the WWE with a Nexus. He was one-man band. Since then, he hasn't really been on his own. He was in the three-man band. He was, a tag wrestler. So now to see him standing on his own 2 feet and doing his own thing, I think that's great. And I think it's a real good fit for him in Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, so do I. And I think he'll only keep coming on leaps and bounds. And it's really, as I say, it's really good to see. And as you say, a really good one-on-one encounter for this one. The finish, Angels went for the Halo strike. Heath ducked it, hit the wake-up call for the win. Where do we see Heath positioned now? As you say, Rhino was the team partner. He's no longer, we don't know I think Rhino may be injured. I can't quite remember what the story is with Rhino. Does Heath now carve his way into a singles title opportunity?
I was just thinking exactly this. I'm glad you've asked me, because I don't think he's necessarily fit for the X Division title, and I don't think he fits in like the digital media title. So it would be the Impact World title that you would see possibly could make a play for at some point. I think the fans would absolutely be behind that. As I say, man of the people, bit of a people's champion, very, very popular. I think he needs to string some wins together and have a run of good matches, which we know he's capable of. But if in 6 months' time we saw him appearing in the world title picture, I wouldn't be surprised at all. No,
me either. I have to say, hopefully he seems to be enjoying it. Singles run seems to be working, so let's see that continue. Cut backstage, Eric Young is going to show the world why he wasn't dead at some point, which is going to be interesting. And he wasn't surprised what the design done last week. Now, one of the things we're going to move on to the next match now. This was a Jake something and Davey Vega. Squash matches in itself, you generally just sort of run of the mill. This was a bloody good squash match.
Yeah, it was like an extended squash match, wasn't it?
Yeah. Jake something. I mean, he's certainly something.
Yeah.
That's for sure. He's got something about him. I mean, he caught him and he was lifting this guy into the air. There was a huge forearm. He hit like a Vader body press, screamed, "What's his name?" The fans screamed something before he hit the big black hole slam. He seems to be someone that Impact are really high. As we said before, I think we mentioned last week, we're not too familiar with him because obviously we've just coming back to start watching Impact. But Jake something certainly has something about him.
Oh, it definitely does. And they're obviously high on him, and he's getting real good reactions from the crowd as well. There's obviously an element of audience participation when he starts shouting, "Who am I?" or, "What's my name?" And the audience are going for it at the minute. So be interesting to see where that leads, whether it's a title picture or whether it's just like an undefeated run, and we'll see who he ends up in a kind of feud with, because he's having these one-off matches at the minute. Kind of returned the Ultimate X, and he had a good showing in that. But yeah, again, a great showing for him. He's got some great moves in his arsenal as well, and that black hole slam. It's about time that was reused as a finisher again. It was Abyss's move, wasn't it?
Abyss,
going back to our initial run with Impact of the fandom. So yeah, good to see that move's been resurrected and used as a finisher.
Yeah, I do like that, and it is what you call a finisher as well, isn't it? You would, from a realistic purpose, that move would end it if you ever
absolutely
like something, and like Abyss when he used to hit it, you could tell that move was a finisher. So interesting to see what's next with Jake something. Cut back again, our good friend Bully Ray, Moose, and Myers was walking up to Leo Rush. Said he was, they said, it was a great decision that they made last week. Rush sort of said, look, he wasn't there to make friends. And Moose sort of jumped in and said, they don't need to be friends. They just need to be on the same team at Emergence. And Ray said he wanted Rush to experience the trust they had with each other. So there's a 6-man tag that's arranged for next week, i.e. tonight or tomorrow, sorry, when it's taped. So that'll be interesting to see. And then our good friend, who we believe in, Joe Henry, comes to the ring, says life is too short. You should tell your friends what you think. And that includes letting your friends insert themselves into your contractually entitled rematch for a title they lost. Which I thought was fantastic. Uemura come out, come to the ring and turn towards the camera. Like Joe Henry said, I am Uemura champion, which is something
short and sweet.
Short and sweet, to the point. But then obviously Kenny King come out. Now I've really loved this match. Now Uemura is really good in New Japan. I think he's I think they call him the ace in New Japan. So he's really good. Yeah. So they have some good. So him and I think it's Yata. I can't remember his name. Like Tsuzuki, I think it was.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, take my word for it. Anyway, but anyway, this match was really good.
Yeah,
but Kenny King and Joe Henry, really, really good, really good one-on-one match. Kenny King picks up the win on this. He hits the royal flush. And he actually shoved Uemura into Henry and then hit the royal flush for the pinfall. But a really solid one-on-one encounter and two really great talents.
Yeah, I love the fact that these indie-style triple threat matches are appearing on television more and more often now. I think there's always been a kind of style to a triple threat match, and it generally involved one person being eliminated for the ring.
Yeah, and
we had a succession of one-on-one matches. More and more so now, we get these true triple threat matches where there's 2-on-1. They incorporate moves where all three participants are involved, and I much prefer this kind of style match. This was great. Like tongue in cheek from Joe Hendry at the start, kind of perhaps realizing he'd made a bit of a mistake, and maybe that was in the heat of the moment the week before. But yeah, this makes a lot of sense too in terms of when champions lose a title and they get a rematch, and rather than them just losing that rematch, you insert a third participant in to take the pin, and it protects the challenger a little bit more, or the former champion, if you like. They're not getting back-to-back defeats then. So I really like what they did here with this. And I'm sure, we've used to see Kenny King in some great matches in the X division, and he's really starting to kind of give us some steam now as the digital media champion. So let's see. I'm sure, he's match of the week contender most weeks when he appears on Impact. So I'm kind of looking forward to both seeing his reign continue, and I'm also looking forward to see what's in the future for Hendry as well.
Yeah, me too. I like to think Hendry can go on to, I suppose, he's the only X division of the world, isn't there? They haven't really got I know they've got a digital media, but they haven't really got like a, what you call mid-card title, have they?
No, but I think he could perhaps feature more in some more serious kind of storylines, perhaps. I know he's got the comedy element to his character. But we kind of saw him on like the pre-show at the last pay-per-view. I'd rather like to see him establish himself higher up the card. I'm not saying that he's going to be going for the world title anytime soon, and his style doesn't really suit an X Division type match.
No.
Although there's been a lot of wrestlers in the past that aren't necessarily high flyers that can compete in that X Division. But yeah, I just want to see him establish himself higher up the card.
Yeah, me too. I'd like to see that with Joe as well. I'm a big fan of Kenny King as well. I've loved his work for us quite a few years now. The next was a really good promo, and we touched on it just a minute ago about Gresham. So Gia Miller was backstage with Bayley and Gresham, and they were talking about their match. And Bayley noted that Gresham was unhappy because the rules were not being enforced in Impact, and that they are more than talents have to overcome any cheat. Gresham said that Optimism didn't win matches, but if Bayley had his back, he had Bayley's. I really like that because it was continuing the theme. It sort of continued because when I saw Gresham was in this tag, I was like, well, hang on a minute. A week ago or 2 weeks ago, he was walking out. So this is a really good thing to bring him back in, and at least they kept with the storyline, because sometimes you see it in other promotions where they'll walk out 1 minute and 2 weeks later they're back and they're wrestling, and there's no mention of what's happened previously. But they kept it fresh. They reminded you that Gresham was unhappy, so they kept that, which I thought was really important.
Yeah, I think this was the perfect setup for the match. Obviously, Speedball is a kind of whiter than white baby face, and it's so interesting to kind of. I'm assuming that it's going to lead to a match or a feud between the two partners, Gresham and Speedball, and it's a really interesting way to get there. Gresham is obviously fed up. He's had enough of kind of being on the wrong side of the law when perhaps the rules haven't been enforced. And I know that the Rascals were fined 2 weeks, but it didn't really seem like the massive deterrent, which kind of plays out in the match later on. So yeah, I think this sowed the seeds, and then we saw that play out later on in the match.
We certainly did. And then we had Josh Alexander, Sabin, Shelley, and Kushida, and they were talking about how they were on the same page for Emergence. And then Sabin sort of said he'd be the first ever 10-time X Division champion. And Kushida just mumbled, maybe. At that point.
It's funny because Sabin did the X and Kushida was wearing the X, so I thought that was quite a smart move.
That was. Kevin Kelly was joined at that point, and it was talking about the G1 climax between Jeff Cobb, Zack Sabre Jr., and Eddie Kingston and Ishii, which, I mean, I know this wasn't necessarily Impact, but they was talking about the G1 climax. Those two matches should be amazing.
Yeah, and what I love as well is the willingness for these companies to work together, because obviously there were AEW featured wrestlers there. There's New Japan, there's Impact, there's independent wrestlers. It's just a great. We're getting so many great matches that we never thought we were going to have, and televised matches as well, because perhaps on the independent circuit these matches were happening, but now they're available to a worldwide audience essentially, and I just think that's great for wrestling. So yeah, a couple of great matches set up there, and it was cool that they were featured on Impact, and we got a glimpse into that. Yeah,
it was good. I can't wait to see the result of those. Well, I suppose that's already happened now, going back as this was last week. But I'll need to catch up on the G1 a little bit. But it's nice to see the crossover. I think it's because it's on AXS, right?
Yeah, that's it. There's like a working relationship, though, isn't there, between these companies these days, and long may it continue.
Yeah, definitely. I love these. I love it. AEW do it as well, and Impact have got their own event coming up. Where they've got their own Forbidden Door event coming up, haven't they? So I really like that. And it does, just you say, it brings matches together you didn't think you'd see, and some exciting ones. Hopefully, we'll get to see a bit more of that, and as we move along. Death Dolls were next. How they needed a game plan to get themselves into the Knockouts tag title. They went into a huddle to discuss strategy, and we want the shot and we're awesome was the strategy, which was quite funny. Turned around, Crazy Steve was there, and Courtney Rush jumped into Jessica's arms. So Crazy Steve was part of Decay when Courtney Rush was
Rosemary,
thank you. Thanks for that. But Steve said he needed to talk to Rosemary, but Rush said that they had business to take care of with Santina, but would talk soon since they were family. And sad, so kind of sadly, Steve said that he understood, which was quite
Yeah.
It's quite funny and also quite fitting. I think they're going to have to get Courtney Rush back to Rosemary at a certain point. Well, the tag match was next. My God, this was crazy. This match was so good. Gresham, interestingly, come out with a flag that said the Foundation, which was his old Ring of Honor group.
Yeah,
I believe. Smoke was pouring out his octopus mask, which looked really great.
Yeah.
The Rascals certainly lived up to their name. They tried to cheat immediately in this match, but Gresham and Bailey were able to hit drop kicks on them. I mean, this match, Dave, was absolutely fantastic. The Rascals did end up being Rascals, cheatingly, by using some spray to win. And that's fine, and you can have that. I suppose my thing is, when a match is that good, which it was, I would rather a decisive 3 count for a win without the need of the spray, because the match was so good. But I do get why they done it, because it was smart thinking, playing into the Gresham storyline of everyone's cheating, no one's adhering to the rules, playing into the Rascal storyline of just been fined 2 weeks for cheating, so we're going to do it again to try and test the waters. So I understood the finish, but what a great match.
Yeah, this was great. And going back to your point on Gresham and the octopus mask and the smoke, I think the presentation of him is sensational. He really does feel like a big star in Impact, and he is. He's a big star in wrestling. I think the fact that he kind of at the pin here just plays into those frustrations of exactly what he's been talking about. And the fact that, yes, Speedball Bailey had his back, but he didn't have his back in terms of stopping the pin. And therefore, they lost the match and he got sprayed in the eyes with a spray. I think they can continue that. At the end of the match, he was like kicking the ring steps and he looked frustrated. So, yeah, I think we ultimately build those into a one-on-one match, and it allows the Rascals to go on in the tournament. But yeah, a sensational match. These are the type of wrestlers and the type of action that Impact is known for, and why there's been a boom in ratings for them and an increase in their following, and a lot of interest in the UK for their UK tour coming on later on in the year.
Yeah, definitely. So looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I can't make the UK tour. I'm actually in Madrid. So chose the wrong time, unfortunately, Impact. I'm away, but I'll definitely be keeping tabs on that. The final segment, which was the Eric Young sort of telling us why he wasn't dead. I didn't quite get this. It was narrated by Eric Young as well, so it's like a first person narrative of what is it like to die. He sees me coughing up blood. He's on a motorcycle. I don't think it explained anything really, and I was ended up more confused at the end of the segment than I was trying to sort of. I was hoping to end this and going, okay, cool. I wish like James Mitchell just resurrected him from the dead or something. That would have been a bit more kind of, say, believable, but it would have fit a bit more than him just sort of walking off coughing up blood.
Yeah, it was a bit Game of Thrones-esque on it when he kind of. But he started coughing up the blood, and a bit of like Jon Snow has come back from the dead. But yeah, I suppose it was just a way to get out of what they'd set up last year in the fact that Deonna had murdered him, essentially. I didn't see that, but kind of read up on what happened.
Yeah.
So I suppose in wrestling, you can just ignore stuff to a degree. But I think Impact did want to address it and try to do something a little bit more creative. And just had kind of Eric on his motorbike talking about death. So yeah, it was fine. I didn't mind it massively, and they can kind of move on now, and I suppose build towards that match between Eric Young and Deonna.
Yeah, it just threw me the whole.
You could say it was unnecessary to a degree, but some fans would say it was absolutely necessary because how do they kind of talk out of that? So it was. Yeah, maybe the James Mitchell idea might have been a little bit
more better than
maybe.
Just resurrect. But I mean, look, it got to the point. They said they would say why he wasn't dead, and in a roundabout way, they have done. So that's fine. But look, overall, last week I gave Impact a 7.5. I thought last week it was a toss up between Dynamite and Collision for the best show.
Yeah,
I know Collision's ratings were really hit because of SummerSlam that come out, but we won't talk about that on this show. But for me, 7.5 Impact. But I think AEW stole it last week.
Yeah, I think I went a 7 for last week, and AEW's 200th edition of Dynamite was my favourite show of the week. For a lot of great wrestling again last week, and it started off pretty well this week.
It has done. So, guys, that is the Impact Wrestling review. We're going to be doing Raw review very shortly, so you'll see 2 going up today. We're also going to be talking to the Black Country Championship Wrestling owner a bit later on today about
Mr. RC Chaos.
RC Chaos. There he is, the man himself. We're going to talk about running the promotion, how that works, obviously the ins and outs, the trials, the tribulations, a bit of everything about how running a promotion can have its pluses and its negatives. Really looking forward to that. Monday, 7 o'clock. Hit our YouTube, hit our socials. We are announcing the Turnbuckle Championship match for Gold Rush. Ignite. You'll see 2 talents that have already been announced. Lance Rivera, George Lacos have been announced for it. We are announcing the match. It's not as more than 2 competitors in it. So that's all I can say now, but just keep it glued on Monday. You'll see that. But Dave, this was a good Impact review. Good start to our review shows this week. We are back very soon with Raw. Until then, guys, buckle down, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.